spindle sander is great at doing inside curves like this. It is not used on outside curves. It will not give you the shape you want, and it will not look good. So this one is a great size for something larger like this. You want to match and change the size of the spindle, this piece here, the sandpaper, to match the piece that you are trying to sand. So before we turn it on, we are going to put our piece around it. If it's fitting around it, we do never turn the machine on and then put this on there while it's running. So here's a quick little demo of how the spindle sander works. I'm not going to be pushing very hard. The spindle, the power tool, is going to be doing most of the work. I am being nice and gentle and going nice and slow and just letting the machine do the work. If I'm pushing too hard, it's going to be more dangerous and it can end up burning your piece of wood and making it look bad. So do not push really hard as you go. The vacuum should be on. We have hoses hooked up to everything here, so make sure the vacuum is on. Notice my fingers are far back from the surface there. I did not stay in one spot. I kept it moving, going from right to left, just like it says here, so that I do not heat up the wood and burn anything there on the wood. And notice the spindle, as it spins, it goes up and down. That helps to keep the sandpaper cooler and your wood cooler so it doesn't wear out and heat things up too much. But we're just keeping it moving as we go, not pushing too hard, and sanding really gently. If I want to do these other spots, I will switch out the spindle, and we'll see that in just a minute. Next, we're going to look at how you can change out the spindle over here. And we have a lot of different sizes here for the spindle. And there's going to be a little wrench hanging down here. This wrench will fit over the top of this here. Before we do any of that though, we want to make sure that the machine is unplugged. So let's unplug the machine. Nice and unplugged there. Not any chance of this thing turning on right now. All right, we put that over the top here. Get the wrench on there and we go lefty-loosey. And we get that kind of loose there, and that will come off. We don't want to lose any of these pieces. Notice this was a big spindle, so we had a big washer on there. This will slide off now. And if we're going to do a smaller spindle, like this one, we do not want to use the big washer. That just doesn't look right, right? So let's use the smaller size there, and we'll hang the other one up here so we don't lose it. And we'll put the other spindle back here on the side. Now we tighten this down again, spinning on this nut. If you can get it started there it goes. And now we hold it so it doesn't move, and we start spinning this on. We need to get this tight enough. We don't need to kill this thing. We don't need to crank it down as hard as we possibly can. What's happening here is this is crushing this piece of rubber and squeezing the rubber down. As the rubber is getting squeezed down, it kind of pushes outwards on the sandpaper and makes that so it can't slip off there. So now it is looking pretty good. We're gonna put our wrench back. We are not ready to turn this on right now. Notice there's a big gap here. This ring is not the right size. So we're gonna have to come over here and find the right size ring. And I think, over here, there we are. Right size ring. That looks like a good fit there. You want the smallest gap possible. If you think it's too big of a gap there, try a different ring. We don't want it to touch though. Now, we should be ready to sand in some smaller areas, getting in these tighter corners here if you need to. Before turning on the machine, we want to test and make sure everything is going to work properly though. So we're going to plug this back in. Before touching our project on there, we're going to check everything out and turn on the machine, make sure everything looks good, sounds good, and nothing is going wrong. If I want to do something like this and do the inside here, I cannot get this in there right now. So before I turn the machine on, I'm going to place this over the top there, hold it down so it's not touching, Again, it's not touching the wood yet. Then I turn on the machine. Notice I'm waiting for the machine to come to a complete stop before removing my piece of wood. Now I can take it off and check out what it needs to maybe sand a little more here or there, wherever you need to. But again, do not put it on there or take it off while the machine is moving. When we're using the spindle sander, we always want to keep it flat on the table, never tilt it or anything like this. It is going to mess up your project. It's not going to be safe, and it just won't look good when you're done. So keep it firm on the table, holding it down with 2 hands so it doesn't get away from you as we sand this down and make it look good. The blood bubble on the spindle sander is going to be 1 inch. So depending on the size of the spindle here, you're going to have to keep your fingers 1 inch back. If it's a smaller spindle, it's going to be the distance from the actual spindle, not the distance from this line. So this is very small here. I'd have to keep my fingers back. You cannot look at the mark on the table here, because other ones are going to be smaller, as we see over here. You could get your fingers a little closer inside that yellow ring on this one. When we're sanding something, you'll notice it says move in this direction here, move in that direction, because the spindle is going to be spinning in this direction. You want to move in the opposite direction here. So start on the right and move your piece this way. If I'm sanding this little portion here, I'd move it this way as I sand it. Always try and move that way around that. If you go that way, sometimes it can get carried away from you and fly out of your hand much easier and not be as safe.